Picture a medieval serf standing on a strip of land he will never own, working soil that belongs to a lord who lives in a castle he will never enter, bound not by chains, but by a quieter mechanism: dependency, debt, and the threat of eviction from the only livelihood he knows. And now picture yourself in a rented apartment you cannot modify, driving a car you're still paying off, streaming music you do not possess a single copy of, working a job whose healthcare and shelter are bundled together so tightly that losing one job means losing your home. And ask yourself honestly how far you have actually traveled from that field. This is the quiet argument at the center of what analysts are starting to call Feudalism 2.0, not a metaphor, but a structural echo. In the Middle Ages, freedom was never absolute. It was conditional, granted by a landholder in exchange for labor, loyalty, and the acceptance of risk that flowed strictly downward. Bad harvest, your problem. Bad war, your sons. Bad debt, your family for generations. Today, the currency has changed, but the current has not. Mortgages structured to keep principal residences leveraged for 30 years. Subscription models that replaced ownership of software, cars, even farm equipment with perpetual licensing fees, and a labor market where gig work transfers the risk of illness, injury, and slow seasons entirely onto the individual, while the platform keeps the upside. Economists call this asset-light capitalism. Corporations increasingly prefer to rent you everything rather than sell you anything, because a renter can be repriced, reterms, and recontrolled in ways an owner cannot. Look at the numbers. Home ownership rates among people under 40 have been sliding for 2 decades, while institutional investors buy up single-family homes specifically to rent them back to the very generation priced out of buying them. Student debt in the United States alone exceeds $1.7 trillion, structured so it cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. A modern, uncancelable bond of servitude with no expiration date. And household debt-to-income ratios in many developed economies now mirror, disturbingly, the debt bondage ratios documented in pre-industrial peasant records, where the average laborer owed more than a year's wages to a landlord or merchant at any given time. So where are we in this historical loop? Some economists argue we are in the earliest stage of the cycle, the moment right before enclosure when common land and public utility get fenced off into private, monetized access tiers, while others argue we are already deep in it, evidenced by buy now, pay later schemes, normalizing perpetual micro-debt for a generation that has never known what it feels like to fully own an object outright. Geopolitically, this shift matters enormously. Nations that maintain higher rates of personal asset ownership tend to show more social and political stability because ownership anchors people to place and to long-term stakes in their community's outcome, whereas a population that owns nothing, no home, no equity, no durable possessions, becomes, almost by definition, more mobile, more precarious, and historically, more volatile. Several sovereign wealth funds and asset managers have quietly begun buying real assets, land, infrastructure, water rights, precisely because they recognize physical ownership as the scarce commodity of the coming decades, even as they sell the public on subscription convenience. So what does survival look like inside this system? Not paranoia, but precision. Prioritize acquiring at least one appreciating, debt-free hard asset as early as possible, even a small one, because equity is the only lever that resists repricing by someone else. Treat recurring subscriptions as a leak to be audited quarterly, not a convenience to be ignored. And understand that financial literacy today is not optional trivia. It is the modern equivalent of knowing how to read a land deed in the 14th century, the difference between a free tenant and a bound serf. The lords have changed their clothes. They now wear the names of landlords, lenders, and platforms. But the underlying question remains exactly the same as it was 800 years ago. Who holds the asset and who merely holds the access to it? History rarely repeats exactly, but it rhymes with uncomfortable precision, and the sharpest observers of this new feudal order are not the ones panicking about it, but the ones quietly, deliberately, buying back the ground beneath their own feet.